It's been a long time, Ben. A whole week.
Way too long. Or maybe not long enough.
Definitely not long enough. Oh, man.
Okay. I'm liking the new look.
Oh, yeah. I look more sophisticated or just...
Well, I mean, sure. Okay, I wasn't going to go as sophisticated, but sure. Kind of close.
Whatever. Don't let the fact matter. Don't let the fact matter. We're here today. Good to be back in the saddle. And we'll pull the curtain back for the viewers at home. Well, not that curtain. He's on. To the dead bodies. Ben is a stickler for preparation for the show, as you can tell by our stunning work on here. Me, I'm a grip it and rip it kind of guy. And today, Ben said he sends the prep over, and I spend literally seconds looking at it to see what we're talking about.
If that.
If I don't usually open the email, I kind of like see if it's in the preview of the email. That's the seconds I'm talking about. However, Ben spends hours preparing for this wonderful podcast. Today, though, he told me not said nothing, so I have no idea where we're at, where we're going. I think he's mad about the Mike Lindell video from last week. So, I don't know. So, it's good to be back in the saddle. My glasses, I think, are halfway clean. No, they're worse now. Okay. So, anyways, Ben, where are we going today, sir?
Yeah, no, this is going to be a fun one, actually. And wanted to put you on the hot seat, as you just said.
Let's go. Let's go. I'm ready.
You like to. And I'm going to kind of pick the baton off from last week, a couple of the things that you and Senator Cruz talked about. And I wanted to kind of talk about a couple of those things, and then we're gonna walk into some other stuff. So
you mean Senator Ted Cruz from Texas, U.S. Senator?
That is the one, and I will.
People in the Republican Party I
would also like to note that at least neither one of you were wearing a sombrero, so it seemed as though this was filmed on location in Texas. Unclear.
Wow.
Can neither confirm nor deny.
That's aggressive. We're going there. Okay.
But so one of the things you guys talked about is, and I think it might have been the first question you asked him, was what his stance on China was, and sort of where he thought they laid in the kind of the global framework. And I think you gave a really good, really interesting answer. Touched on a couple of key points. I wanted to talk about one thing in particular, and I believe the Biden administration just put out an executive order addressing this either today or on Friday, talking explicitly about how we're going to go about sourcing the materials needed for the batteries to be put in these with the wind turbines and the solar powered energy infrastructure, etc.
Yeah.
I'm curious, so how you see that playing out, in the short term and then the longer term. Right now, obviously, China has a dominating market share of rare earth metals, and the U.S. Gets either the lion's share of or all of our source from them. The Biden administration has at least postured that we want to look at changing that. Is that something that's practical? What would it take for us to do that domestically? What are some of the? I think it's. So there are so many things that are happening these days that are, you can just take it at face value, but it's okay. If this happens, then what's kind of to come. Can you kind of walk us through a little bit of that dynamic?
Yeah, well, so you're familiar, I know, with what goes into rare earth mining. It's not a pretty sight, and I think, when you think about we like to put labels on folks, and so sometimes it's helpful to get through a conversation. But in this conversation, I don't think it is. So when you talk about the green movement, there's layers to it, right? So you've got my favorite greenie, right here, Mr. Bill Gates. You have a piece I've read some of come out in the War Room in the morning, so be sure to check that out. Matter of fact, we'll put a discount code in the show here. And so you have that. Mr. Gates obviously is familiar with what goes on to mine for all these things in the process. Then as you work your way down, I think less and less people become aware of the toll that these things take on the earth. And so I don't think the green movement in the United States, by and large, has the stomach for seeing our lands be destroyed for rare earth minerals. I don't. And so I think that they think they do, but then when they see what happens, I'm not sure that many of the, so if you parse it like this, you have like maybe a Bill McKibben or a Bill Gates who are on the spectrum of kind of fraudulent on some level, but then you have the average person who's like, yeah, let's go green, and they don't understand the environmental impact of the green movement. And so when you start seeing large amounts of land, and where's this land at? I even know in the U.S. I don't know where the rare earth minerals are even at. U.S. You might know the answer. Being excavated, then all of a sudden you're going to, I think, see that narrative be really questioned, and there's going to be a fraction of the green movement in the U.S. that will have to deal with the fact: do they want this done in the U.S. or could we do something easier like nuclear? And so,
do you by chance would you be able to pull up a picture of one of these rare earth mines so we could take a look at what you're talking about? Because I do think that's it's really important that the scope and how how large these are is incredibly pertinent to the conversation, right? I mean, to your point, it's one thing to advocate for the green technology and get these rare earth metals from China, and you don't see this in your backyard, but what happens if the farmer next door has his entire farm excavated under eminent domain because he happens to be over the wrong piece of property?
Right. I will pull one up if you could answer Joe's question, and I will find us a picture. Go ahead.
So, is there any validity to claims that rare earth metals can be harvested from fly ash piles associated with coal burning energy facilities?
I don't know the answer to that. Do you?
Yeah, Joe, that's a good question. That's not something I'm familiar with. So I don't want to postulate. I'm intrigued though. I'm gonna look that up later.
Okay. So here is let me see here. Let me go to full screen. There we go. I don't think I'll blow this up anymore, but you can see there on the screen. This is from greenbiz.com. So I think we're safe to assume that they're going to have a certain slant on the story. Mm-hmm. And they're not, their headline is rare earth minerals power the world, but mining leaves local and global footprints in the land.
I mean, look how unbelievably deep that is. I mean, does the article by chance talk about the metrics?
Don't.
And
here's a map of that's from Waters. Yeah, I don't see. Let me see if I can do search here depth and deep mines disturb small. Okay, yeah. So I don't know. I don't.
And so yeah, I think that kind of goes to the second point I was going to bring us to really well. Is there seems to be this narrative from the green tech, the green crowd that the ends justify the means, and even if that means lack of infrastructure and lack of reliable power and lack of sustainability and lack of some of the sort of the basic core American ideals and certainly first world ideals, that it's still okay because we'll be going renewable.
Here's the answer to the question, Ben, real quick. Sorry, it is in that article. I think if I just scroll up right here, pit mines can be up to 3/4 of a mile deep, but typically cover less than 20 square miles. In contrast, surface mines typically extend less than 1,000 feet into the earth crust, but can extend over hundreds of miles. So depending on the type of mine they're using, there is your space. And so out here in Texas, you will be familiar with this. A few years back,
in context, an oil pad, by the way, is like what, 10 acres, maybe 5 acres.
Yeah. Well, it was. So what I was saying is, if you probably heard some of these stories in Texas over the past few years, when the market was kind of booming, there was people who were frustrated because sand was in such a demand. They'd go out and level off these hills and kind of obscure Texas to take the sand, and people were like, "Oh my gosh, you're destroying this is Texas. We're pro like oil and gas and energy and stuff like that." And so folks were getting upset over the mining for sand, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay, I thought you were going to keep going. So, no, okay. So, going back to the original question, let's put you in the driver's seat. So you're, okay. Don't let the facts. Hold on. I can get it rolling here. I'll get it rolling here. Boom. There we go. Sorry. But I'm gonna deputize for the rest of the conversation here as President Ryan Ray. You're now, you've taken over as POTUS. You're in that seat. What is in live time right now? How would you be handling that conversation in terms of that, specifically with rare earth metals? And I guess more specifically, I want to lean into a little bit of your expertise on China. And so, how would you kind of interface and directly work with, or how would you approach that issue?
Yeah, so I mean, I think I guess it depends on what your agenda is, and so I am perfectly content that if China wants to dig for rare earth minerals, let them do it. And if landowners here want to dig for it, then sure. So what I would do is, if I was the Biden administration and I wanted it here, then I would cover up everything about it so as I talk about it. If I didn't want it here, though, what I would do is show it over and over and over again, not just in China, but in Africa and all of these spots where it's ruined water, water areas and destroyed villages and all that stuff. I would just show that perpetually, because I don't think that most of the environmental movement has the stomach for that. And so then I start talking about where we're going to put it at, and then I think the step to get this out of the discussion in the U.S. from a propaganda standpoint, messaging standpoint, is really not that hard. So if I'm big oil, I think it's pretty easy. I think if that's the better question. If you're big oil and you don't want this, or I don't know if big oil doesn't want it, but if you're an old business, you don't want this, I think it's pretty simple. Instead of, as your post mentioned today, talk about the Gasland documentary, I think doing something like that for rare earth minerals is quite easy. And spending not $100,000, but a couple $1 million to really get a video done well, a documentary done well, put it in the theaters, and show it is an environmental concern. And so I think it's actually quite easy, if you're oil and gas, to get this narrative out there. Because really, I think if oil and gas is smart, what they want to push towards is nuclear. Like, I think that's where the play should be. So if I was president, or if I was, advising oil and gas, industry leaders, I would say you want to push towards nuclear, because that's the best of all worlds, right? We can still have our natural gas peaking plants where we need them. We can still use oil where we want it. We kind of put coal off to the side, nuclear for the base load, wind and solar kind of goes to the sidelines. That I think is the play. And I think showing the environment, because there are legitimate people who do not understand what's involved, showing them what they care about being destroyed is the way to get them on your side. Attack them where their beliefs are held at.
Would you? I mean, do you agree or disagree that it seems like we are at a place in the country that if we simply decided as a policy decision to spend more dollars on nuclear proliferation, we could get it right and pretty quickly, and we can, I think that's something. I say pretty quickly, obviously in context, but I mean, I think that's something that it, should certainly be pursued, to your point, rather than some of these other rabbit holes.
Yeah, I mean, so the nuclear stuff is, so I'm probably the left, right, whatever wing of the argument this is here. I think that banning nuclear production around the world is a crime against humanity. I mean, I think you are literally trying to keep people impoverished and make them. Now, listen, the remote villages in Zambia, they don't need nuclear power. I'm not saying that, right? But where nuclear,
Right.
these big metropolitan, Rio de Janeiro, I don't know if they have them in Brazil or not, but Mexico City, these big, huge cities that could thrive off of nuclear power, the ones that don't, they should have it. That is you talk about getting off coal, you talk about having, reducing emissions, you talk about all this stuff. There it is. Now, as a free market libertarian, I'm not for a bunch of government subsidies and stuff like this, but there's a case to be made that if the emission issue is so traumatic to our society, that simply moving these big metropolitan areas to as much nuclear power as possible to help reduce emissions is one step. Get them off coal, and the World Bank and all these other institutions are giving out billions and trillions of dollars. Why not invest it for that, and then the security to protect it? And let's be practical here. I get a little frustrated about, something might go bad. First off, there's not a lot of suicide bombers out there. Like, that's just not the recruitment for that is kind of a long lead item, and the turnover is pretty high. So I don't think there's a lot of people who are going to be wanting to go and blow up nuclear power plants. I know you can blow up a nuclear power plant, quite honestly. I don't think you can, but I think that there's a lot of fear about what might happen around meltdowns and stuff like this. I think that those things are all easily assuaged if you handle it right. And so, yeah, I think that is step one to do. And I think I haven't finished Gates' book. You have. I'm curious. He talks about using nuclear in the mix, and so maybe he's right on that.
So actually, I haven't. I'm about 2/3 the way through, I guess.
Okay.
And he does. Yeah, he makes. I think he makes a really good case that nuclear should. I don't think he goes as far as to say it should be base load, but I mean, it should certainly be a healthy portion of the mix, which I think is inarguable at this point.
And I'm not a grid expert, so I'm not, maybe you can do base load, maybe you can be 60% base load, whatever. I don't know if you 100% base load, but a larger portion. And so you look at China. I mean, they have all these cities. I think I told you. I know I told you. I went to this one city, it had like 1 million people, and it's an irrelevant city in China. 1 million people. Like if you told someone I went to this city, they're like, where? Where's it at now? It's like it's got 1 million people. Like, yeah, okay, so what? That's Midland, what? Who cares? It's like no big deal. And so,
Right.
You think about that. When DFW has what 3-4 million.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Houston is closer to, and I think both those are closer to about double that. But
Houston has 12 million people.
The Houston Metroplex is about 12. Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Well, Texas only has like 26 million people in
it. I'm unfamiliar with that number, so that could be accurate.
Houston Metroplex population is 7 million.
Really?
Yeah. This is the greater Houston Metropolitan area, 7 million. Yeah.
What year? Recently?
This is 1827.
What?
2019.
2019. Oh, interesting. Oh.
Yeah, if you do like Texas population, so Texas population is 29 million. So you take that, so you got 7 in math. You got someone just die. Is the person that's trapped in the back trying to escape?
Don't worry, let's cut.
We get a call for security. Tap twice if you need help.
What's happening over here? What's going on over here? What the fuck?
Tap twice if you need help, please.
Excuse me. Don't worry about it. All good. There's just been a glitch in the matrix.
I think he muted himself. Anyways, my point was, he's listening but not talking, is that there's 7 million people in Houston, and so if you take that and just kind of take Houston, Austin, San Antonio, DFW, then I don't think 12 million is possible with a 30 million population. So,
all right, yeah, no, I was working on bad information. That's fair. That happens more often than not. So all right, so we're gonna switch gears a little bit. Curious from the other side. So put on. This is gonna be a fun one for you, I think. Don't want the facts, by the way. Don't want the facts. Put on the hat. You're now President Xi, and you're looking at the Biden administration that just came in. You're assuming you have a 4-year window. What are
that's aggressive? That's really aggressive.
Listen,
that's really aggressive. I'll put the big banner up there. Sorry, that's really aggressive though.
Oh dear. All right.
I think Vegas would give you an odd on that.
Fair. Okay, fair.
Okay.
All right.
4 years. In your hypothetical world, okay.
Yeah, just roll with this. What are 2 or 3 things that you can look at this administration and if we get these things accomplished, this is a win. What do you think are on the kind of the top of China's list here?
Ooh, that is a tough question. I've said for some time, I think China views their relationship with the EU as crucial, and probably more crucial than I think some commentators I was reading last year were giving it credit to. And so if you go back early last year, Xi Jinping contacted Angela Merkel 2 or 3 times in the first quarter of 2020, and he contacted Trump like once, something like that. I can't remember what it was. And now Germany was about to be the president of the EU in July, so there's a lot of things going on. And as we know, a lot of the stories surrounding the EU are tied up with Germany because they're big members. And then now you're seeing the past week I saw something about Xi Jinping and France, talking with France or China and France, can't remember who broke down. So if I were him, if I would think of a couple things. One, I would figure out how far can you push the relationship with the Saudis, and so how far can you do that? How far can you drive the wedge between the EU and the US? That would be 2. And then 3, can you pull off the Olympics in Beijing, I think they're in Beijing in 2022 without really any serious criticism? If you can do those 3 things, I'm not saying the world is your oyster, but I think you've made a lot of ground.
How would you qualify the current dynamic of the EU-US relationship?
I think it's probably. I think the EU is much like the United States, and so you have a Texas in there, and you have a New York in there, and so there's differing views on. There's no Texas in the EU. Let's just be clear about that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's a little strong. I wasn't going to say anything.
Sorry,
maybe
my
Florida.
My apologies.
Maybe a Florida.
We'll give them a Tennessee, North Carolina, somewhere in that range.
All right. Okay. Oh, that's actually kind of nice, though. Yeah. All right. Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm being nice. I'm being charitable today. So okay, let me rephrase. So in the EU, you have a New York, California, Oregon, Washington, and Colorado. Okay, that's kind of what you have.
Okay, fair. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Different levels. And so I think that what their motivations are, and the straw that's going to drink is going to be obviously Germany and the bigger countries. And so if you look at when Trump was criticizing Germany for wanting U.S. troops there to protect them from Russia, while Germany is working with the Russians, it's hard to read how they value the relationship, because they want the Russian gas, they want the U.S. protection, they want the best of both worlds, and they've been getting it. So why would they not want it? So as long as they can do that, and I don't think Russia's a threat to Germany. I'm very open and honest about that. I think they're no threat to Germany, and so they're not.
You don't seem to think that Russia is a threat to anybody. Is that fair?
Well, I mean, maybe one of the Stan brothers,
Oh, but anybody of relevance?
Anybody of relevance? No, I don't think so. And so, yeah, I mean, their economy would be like this 4th or 5th biggest state in the U.S. or something like that. It's not that big.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think this whole narrative of Russian fear is mainly hyped up. I see Joe in the comments over here asking a question. He might disagree with me on this one, but so from the EU standpoint, they need China, they need Russia, everyone needs everyone, and that's kind of what's lost here. And so, what is the EU to do? Are they to come out and say, well, we need China explicitly, and screw the US? Well, if they say that, I doubt Biden would do a whole lot, but he'd probably get upset and saber rattle a little bit and stuff like this. And so, yeah, so I think the relationship is they've got a pretty good deal, and so as long as you can kind of appease both sides, then so be it.
Okay, so
hold on, Joe has a question. Let me pull this up here. So Joe's asking, what about the Uyghurs? So if you take out the points I just said, then the Uyghurs are a non-issue, right? So if you can put pressure on the Saudis to buy more oil from the Saudis, or work with the Saudis more, if you can work with the EU won't have the spine. The EU didn't have a spine. There's the body. There's the body. I'm trying to make a serious deal. Yeah, there it is. It's escaped.
Yep. Let's just shame the cat for a second. Unbelievable.
High quality take your cat.
Unbelievable.
Good night.
If
you can get, I said this is the high quality take your cat. Give me a break. If China can strengthen its relations with the EU, then who is going to do anything with the Uyghurs? There's not a lot that can be done unless it's some multilateral, universal tariff sanction boycott. Maybe they would concede on the Uyghurs. And then if you make it to 2022 and you get to the Olympics and no one really raises or bats an eye, I mean, what's going to happen?
So to kind of couple onto Joe's question there, again, with you on the hat, with you in the driver's seat here. I mean, what's the game? What's the end game here? What's the win for China as far as the Uyghurs go? Is this just about attrition and just nefarious intent, like full stop, or is there at least an aim that this is trying to chase here?
So, I mean, I was stunned that the Republican commentators were so mad at what Biden said. If you go back and watch his 3-minute clip on China, I think he nails it. They're xenophobic.
Hmm.
Xi Jinping is consolidating power. When you're consolidating power, you need an enemy. The Uyghurs are radical Muslims. They might kill. Now, I have no idea about all the Uyghurs one way or another. It's an atrocity and needs to stop. Maybe some of them were radicalized at one point, maybe not. I don't really know. But what's happening to the children is not acceptable. But if you start telling people the Uyghurs are radicals, they're going to try to tear us down. They're going to try to kill us. Well, that's an enemy. And so to that end, they serve as an enemy that Xi Jinping needs to consolidate power. And oh, by the way, they're on the western border. And so you're trying to protect your flank there. So yeah, I think that from Xi Jinping's standpoint, I think Biden nailed it. That that's what they do, and they need enemies. And this is part of the thing with Trump was he gave Xi Jinping a clear enemy.
Right.
Right. Yeah, and
Mhm.
so he gave him a
Mhm.
clear enemy, which is that we're going to work with Trump. And people were critical in China that Xi Jinping maybe worked too much with him, didn't work with him enough. But when he wanted to, he could turn and say, "Well, look how America's treating us. Look how they're talking about us. Look at their problems." And so.
Okay, so that actually brings up another question I'd like to ask you here. Average Chinese citizen, fan of Trump or no?
I have no idea.
You don't know?
I have no idea. That's the hard part. So this is an interesting question. Think about it like this. When you ask a Chinese citizen in China what they think about something, right? The question that the person that's if you're asking the question, you have to realize is they could be lying because they're scared of blowback for what they say. Think about it. There's 100 million members of the CCP. Okay, so it's going to be unlikely that a CCP member is going to step out, which means that you start talking about the connections to the CCP; they're everywhere.
Right.
So if you ask someone what they think of Trump and what information do they actually get about Trump, their news is heavily filtered. It's not like they're getting CNN and Fox battling it out every night. They're getting state propaganda shoved down their throat, and so what they think, I really don't know. And that's kind of a question that we talk to commentators about. So a lot of people in the West kind of purport this idea that the Chinese people want a certain thing. And it's really interesting. We don't know what the Chinese people want. I don't think the Chinese people want America. I think that most people agree with that. I think they probably want a little less state intervention, but they also realize that this came from the rice farm, and so that they don't want to go back to there either, right? And so it's a very delicate balance. And so I don't know that. We got a question from Joe here. Joe's lighting it up. Ben, you want to take this one?
So, does the attention of Middle Eastern groups like Al Qaeda shift to China? Do we see 9/11 style attacks on Chinese targets in the future? Ryan, actually, I think you're better qualified to answer that question. From my knowledge base, I would not think so. I think that's a can of worms that the Al Qaeda groups know much better than to open. But I mean, what do you think?
Well, I mean, this gets into the heart of why were we attacked on 9/11?
Was that yeah?
I
Was it a
mean,
question?
I mean, serious. Like, so, I mean, I don't know what you're. I don't know. I mean, you've ever talked about this on or offline, or maybe, but if to answer whether or not the Al Qaeda would shift to China, the question is why did they attack the U.S. first place, right? So, if you look at like Nazi Germany, they were rolling through Europe. They wanted world domination on some level. So it's just
Right.
bang, 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 bang. Now there's some
Mhm.
involved in who they attacked. So my thesis is, and I interviewed Scott Horton inside the War Room, and I agree with his thesis, which is it's the blowback theory that if you go read how we handled the Middle East, from funding Al Qaeda to fight the Russians, and then with Iraq War One, and then the Clinton years. I think blowback was the main reason that they attacked us on 9/11. If that's true, I don't know how or why they would turn their attention to China, because China doesn't seem to be doing the same thing. China's buying oil from them. Um, China's doing certain things that to help them that we were not doing. There's not a lot of bombs being dropped from Chinese fighter drones in the Middle East. So
No, I guess my only response to that would be that the tact of the militia groups or the militant groups out there seems to have morphed from, in the 9/11, in 20 years ago, it was, yes, this retribution. And now it seems to be much more land grabby and infrastructure. I mean, they've been putting in oil infrastructure that, they've been taking over states. They've been trying to accrete market share both in markets
Mhm.
and in land. And so, I mean, I think that the story has changed, right? And so, do I think that attacking a China would be like a land grab? Absolutely not.
Right.
But to think that those guys aren't ostentatious enough to pick a fight with the wrong dog, because I don't think it's I think it's more. I think the mandate has morphed away from pure retribution into scope.
Okay, I think there's definitely something there. You know, the end game to it. So part of maybe what's tied up into Joe's question here is the genocide of the Uyghurs, and the problem is you have like Iran who signed a huge deal with China back last September, and so does the larger, broader scale of the Muslim world care about the Uyghur issue? And that doesn't seem to be, at least at the top level, where you have Iran or the Saudis or whoever, Iraq maybe, whoever it might be. They don't seem to be beating the drum on the Uyghur issue very hard, and so. So yeah, so maybe would the militia groups, the terrorist organizations, would they take that mantle up? So you start working through it practically. You know, you're going to go to China. You're going to attack Beijing or Shanghai. Or you couldn't attack where the Uyghurs are at. You attack
Right.
somewhere where people would see it visible. I mean, anything's possible. I don't know. Because I don't understand all the intricacies of Islam and the different groups, and who's allies and who's enemies, and Sunni and Shiite. So I don't know enough about that to see if that might come into play here as well, where the Uyghurs and the terrorist groups are not really aligned. I don't know those answers.
Yeah, and I don't know that labyrinth well enough to speak to it either. I guess related. So what would you say is chief on the agenda, or what would you have chief on your agenda trying to accomplish as the American president, looking at the Middle East? What are some of the things that you and Ella have been talking about? What are some of the topics?
I'd leave the Middle East tomorrow. We'd have all the troops gone. That'd be done. I know you disagree with me. That'd be done.
Are you being hyperbolic or
I don't know how fast you could get it done, but we'd be done as soon as possible.
And if the fallout from that, or the result of that, was an Al Qaeda run government or the like around the region, is that's a risk we're willing to take, or how do you address that? Is there any culpability from the U.S. in your mind from that? How would you sort of address that?
Yeah, I mean, so off the top of my head here, I'd probably come out and make a speech saying, "Hey, what's today? March 1st. Talk to the generals, logistic people. Obviously, there's some bases over there, like in I don't know, maybe Saudi Arabia. We have, I think, have a base. But there's probably a few bases that we have that are long term bases that we probably keep open. But by and large, it's, we're pulling troops out of Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and this is the timetable. We will be there. We're there for the next 30, 60 days, whatever timetable it is, 90 days, I don't know. In that time period, the citizens of these areas know this is what's going to happen. And so if you want to have a peaceful transition when we leave, then you need to come tell us. You need to work with us. If not, we're going to be gone. And we, is this upsetting? Is it bad? Could it be result badly? Yes. Are we getting anywhere? No. And so is America culpable for a lot of terrible things? Yes. And so we're going to leave so we don't keep making it worse. And so that's kind of off the cuff how I'd take it. And then, oh, by the way, we're still going to buy your oil, so don't worry. What would you do? You differ from me on this, I know.
Not in that respect necessarily. I think, look at a macro level. If you're looking at this at 50,000-foot view, there's very little, if any, cogent argument for having an occupation of the level that we do over there. And so once you start to kind of peel that onion, I think where I get stuck at times is don't let the facts. I don't want to go too deep down the rabbit hole here necessarily, But given the kind of the story arc of what landed us there, I think it's a tough sell to just up and leave. Now, to your point, we're not getting anything done right now. Nothing's happening to the benefit of the region or us at the moment, and so there's very little argument to be there. But that's not to say, as the occupation that we're there, we couldn't be doing things like setting up schools and doing things that are helping the infrastructure and actually moving it forward. We're not doing those things, but the opportunity is there since we are there. But given the current construct, yeah, I don't think there's much defense of it.
Yeah, I would just encourage everyone to go read Enough Already by Scott Horton. I'll put that out. Let folks go read it. It's a whirlwind. But so when you start saying that, you start saying, "Uh-oh, uh-oh, uh-oh." Fire the music up. That's a wrap. That's a wrap. I got Brian on my side.
Call it.
Let's go. That's it. My man, Brian Mod, coming in strong. I love it.
What's going on, Brian?
I love it. Yeah, so it's not so the schools and the things like that, and this is where you gotta be careful because people think you're trying to be heartless. It's not. So I would love to set up schools and hospitals and all those things. But God, I don't. Can we? Can we do it effectively? And when you start reading kind of the narratives and the stories have been,
What does that mean? Can we? I mean, of course we can.
It's
the simplest build. It's the simplest building one, is it not?
We've been there for 20 years.
Nope, but that's the point. The point is that we have been making the willful decision not to. But the takeaway there is not.
I'm not sure we're making many willful decisions. I think we're much like the cat chasing his tail. I think is what we're doing, and I think that's the problem. Is that it's
all right? Where's the cat? Hold on.
Yeah, the cat ran the back again. Okay. So can we? Yes, we can build. We can start building schools. We can start building hospitals infrastructure. But ultimately,
I mean, isn't that the way to pay for the sins or whatever you want to call it? Mea culpa.
Yeah. So listen, here's an interesting thing though. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and this was a former Green Beret, maybe, and he said that when he was in Afghanistan, I can't remember what years this was, that the CIA would not let them drive off the roads because the poppy was out there.
Really? Interesting.
And why might you think they would be concerned about you driving over that?
I don't know. Ryan, why don't you tell us?
Hold on. Hold, please. The big banner up here. There we go. Okay. It might be because they want to harvest said poppy and then distribute it on the black market. Maybe.
They wouldn't do that though.
No, they've never done that since Reagan. Sorry. Too soon. Too soon. I didn't know that too soon.
I wasn't ready for that one. I wasn't ready.
Thought that was common knowledge. No, sorry, too soon. Okay. Whatever.
That was good. I like that.
Here's my question for you. I'm gonna turn the tables on you because you've been full court pressing me this whole episode, 40 minutes in.
That's what you get.
All right. How do you think the U.S. should solve the Uyghur issue? Because Ted Cruz, on the interview, said that there are things that we could do. I don't think there's anything from the policy standpoint we can really do. What would you do? I'll let you pick whatever position in the world, obviously, except for like Xi Jinping, but any position outside of Chinese leader that you want to fix the Uyghur issue. What position would that be, and how would you implement that problem? Implement that solution.
I got a lot of problems I can implement. Let me tell you.
Yeah, well,
lots.
I should take off the "Don't let the facts matter" when I say that because that's a fact.
Oh, by the way, while I'm cogitating on this for a second, what the chosen one? What? Like the chosen what?
The chosen one.
But the chosen one what?
That.
I mean, wait, listen. Don't, you can't have a co-host. You can't have a Jewish co-host and have that on the title. I mean, anyways.
Better.
I was just with the talking head. Put your name on there. I mean, what's your That's a good question. So,
Just as an aside note, that watch is aggressive. That watch is very aggressive.
I don't know if aggressive is a good thing or not, but let's just go with it. Yeah, I like it. Yeah. So I mean, it goes. I think so. What's going through my head right now is it kind of goes back to the question I threw to you in the sense of what do we think the goal for Xi is by doing this, and if the goal is just pure retribution and control and that sort of power dynamic, and scapegoat, etc.
Go ahead. Continue. I'll
I
block it.
like that. I like that. Joe, I might have to adopt that on the LinkedIn. I like that. The Oracle of Midland. I kind of like that. So, but if you're looking at this from that standpoint of that's the reason, I don't know that there's an effective lever that you can pull without like getting your hands dirty, if that makes sense. I mean, I don't think there's I don't think there's a policy. I don't think there's an organization or a government that could say something that would sway China to change their tack. I think they've proven that time and time again. And so,
I have it. I have the solution. I have it right here.
So wait. So hold on. I might be getting there. So I would.
Hold on. In that case,
I would put Ryan Ray in. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Hear me out.
I mean, would you agree with my thought train thus far?
Oh, from a policy standpoint,
where I was going.
From a policy standpoint, there's nothing we can do.
So, I mean, so were you going the trade route? Because I was going to go the trade route, but
no. Here's where I go. Here we go. Hear me out. Okay. President Ray takes Oval Office. I call in.
You knew that was happening.
That's 2024, obviously. CPAC invited me, but I said, it's not big enough. I
figured you were going to say 2028 to give yourself a cushion, but I mean, whatever.
I got to take Trump down. He got beat by a guy who didn't campaign. Wait till he faces someone who does campaign. Okay.
You are getting kind of old too. I mean, but you better get out there.
Wow, that's aggressive. Okay. President Ray takes office. Here's what I do. I call in LeBron James, random bobsledder, the Olympian bobsledder. Don't dismiss it before you hear it. This is genius. I'm not done yet.
LeBron James, Doris Bannock. I'm with you.
Okay. Maybe some figure
skater.
Chandy?
I mean,
female figure skater, and then maybe one or two other winter athletes. Then I bring in Jerome Powell. Okay, he's the key to all this. All right. Yep.
Okay.
So here's what I say. Mr. Bobsledder, Ben Samuels will call him. Irrelevant person. Mr. Samuels, here's what we need for you. We want you to come out against the Uyghurs on Twitter, and we want you to pound it so hard that it gets attention. We got some Twitter bots out there. We'll retweet it. We'll have the press secretary talk about it just enough so that China gets mad about it. Now, when that happens, a few of your other figure skaters and winter sports athletes back you up. Now, Mr. James, when this happens, we need you to come forth and to back them. And oh, by the way, I know you're scared, so here's what we're going to do. Mr. Powell over here, he's going to cut you a check. Okay? He's going to cut you a check. And oh, by the way, no taxes. So you get that crisp fed dollar and no taxes on it. And we are off to the races. Because once that ball starts, once LeBron James comes out, now obviously LeBron probably wouldn't do this, but once he or someone of his ilk does it, then the pressure is on not only China with the Uyghurs, it's on the companies in China. So you look at Disney, you look at Nike, you look at Wheaties, you look at all these companies that are over there. All of a sudden, you have this international storm where they can then come out and say stuff. China either has to buckle on the Uyghurs on some level. They have to keep everyone out. And if they keep everyone out, what does that mean? You can kick Nike out, you can kick Wheaties out, you can kick all these companies out, you're not going to do business. So you put them in a position to where they either have to concede the Uyghur issue, which would be a win for humanitarian rights, or they have to start getting rid of supply chain, which costs them jobs, which ultimately they cannot afford because they had to keep 400 million people in the middle class happy. That's the strategy.
So conceptually, I think you're onto something. I like where your head's at. It makes sense. I guess my pushback to that is, and I think you and Chris talked about this recently on the Dragon Feeder podcast. I mean, when you look at the Daryl Morey story, I think that made global news, and but certainly anybody with Houston ties was following that very closely. And so, if the NBA is so unbelievably quick to cow to China, and they are a massive market there and a massive market domestically, what do you think it would take to reach a critical mass where you would reach the sort of level of cooperation that you're talking about? I mean, that doesn't seem...
Serious question. If we can print a billion Fed dollars, to get LeBron James behind this, is that worth it to free the Uyghurs? Or to have China be disavowed and their economy tanks, and therefore they would have to free the Uyghurs because of that way. So no bombs are dropped, no one's going to war.
I guess I'm not buying the narrative that incredibly ratcheted up social pressure actually turns the needle. I mean,
no. Here's why.
Wouldn't they just say, okay, well, everybody on the list that said these things, thank you, but we don't need you?
If you give so in what I'm saying here is, so LeBron James isn't saying anything because he's afraid of all the China money he's losing through Nike, through all this other stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
You give him $1 billion, a cool $1 billion. The fear of future profits earned are out the window. Like, he's getting $1 billion today. And obviously the Fed has the power to do that. They can print them. Like, they print $1 billion.
It kind of sounds like the WeWork guy.
I mean, this is right. It's exactly. Thank you. Thank you. We'll IPO LeBron James. That's what we'll do. We'll IPO him. We could go the free market route on this. Appreciate that.
This NFT thing, we could put make a non-fungible token. Anyways,
so if LeBron James, and this is a serious question, if LeBron James comes out tomorrow and says, Nike, I will no longer wear your shoes until you get out of the China business, what would Nike do? Let me tell you something. They'd have urine running down their legs. They'd be scared to death.
I guarantee you they cut him within an hour.
No. You mean tell me that Nike is going to cut the most popular African-American athlete in the United States? That would be Nike.
Nike would cut Michael Jordan if push came to shove.
That would be the end of Nike, though. And then LeBron goes. Yes. Today in 2021, cut LeBron James?
Today in 2021, we live in a definitional too big to fail world. We live in a world where once you become a Nike, like there are no market moves you can make to fail.
They would be burning.
Unless you're an Enron.
Huh?
Unless you're an Enron.
Well, too soon, but whatever. If Enron made it like 3 or 4 more years, they'd still be a thing.
Definitely. Absolutely.
They just missed the window.
They just missed the float by this much.
No, but seriously, if you're telling me Nike cuts LeBron James over free the Uyghurs, no.
They cut him faster than Twitter cut Trump.
No, sir.
Put it on the board. Put it on the board. That's going to happen. Just watch.
The second time Mr. Bond coming through. Look at him.
Brian, some days I wake up and I'm feeling charitable. This is one of those days. I decided to lob some up for Brian. I just decided I wanted to,
I don't think so. The bobsled guy, if he gets cut, no one cares. I agree. That's why it's got to start with him. And that's why the messaging works, because it starts with him. And then if there's this is a coordinated deal. This isn't like random tweets. Like, this is a coordinated thing. It starts with him. The pressure comes on him. And then you have someone like LeBron James who's standing up for this guy, who's standing up for the Uyghurs. Oh, by the way, LeBron James is standing up for the Uyghurs. I'm telling you, I don't think the political capital. LeBron James had the NBA cancel games last year.
But he was also told to sit down and shut up by a news broadcaster, and that stayed in the news for like the last 2 years.
On Fox.
I mean, yeah.
Why are you watching Fox News? We talked about this.
No, that's the thing. No, see, that's the thing. These things have become ubiquitous. I mean, they're everywhere. It's like you can't get away from it.
I'm assuming Brian's talking about me, so we'll just move on. He didn't say. So
yeah, Brian, you got to be a lot more specific.
No. It's good, Brian. It's good. Once you've established whose side you're on today, we'll just keep it up. Okay, we got time for at least one more question here. Let's see here. I think I could make an argument that if the U.S. took a half a step back in the Middle East, as China continues to increase its influence in the same region, extremist Islamic groups will gradually shift their attention to China in a general sense. I think so. I think the anger from China towards China is going to be more from Africa. That's where I think you'll see it at. Maybe the Middle East stuff. I don't see. Maybe so, Joe. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I'm not seeing.
I mean, like we alluded to earlier.
I mean, why are these groups not going to Russia?
Right. No, I mean I think that's a much more logical. Or I mean, India,
Pakistan. I mean, so they're probably not going to Russia because Russia's funding them.
Another one of the stands.
One of the Stan brothers. I mean, I think China could cut a few checks and have them be left alone and go on. So, oh man! All right, what else you got for me? I'm fired up. Brian Mond's on my side. I probably should end it.
It's good. I was going to say it's good time to cut. Just
I'm going to push the chips all in for one more Brian Mond compliment of the day. What you got for me?
So we talked about a bunch of the kind of geopolitical pieces. The one thing that we didn't really address today specifically is oil. Where do you think that we sit in that? What was that? What happened?
Oil. It's just.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought there was a comment, but
no, it's oil. It's like, oh.
Yeah, no, but we've been on a rally. What do you mean? No. So I mean, where do you think that we sit in sort of the macro cycle here? Are we in a rally point, or are the positive indicators that we've been seeing tangible? Is this something that's sort of a coordinated effort just to float this because it's for the betterment of all parties involved? What are we looking at in terms of some of the fundamentals and kind of what we can maybe expect? Or I know you were on Jay Young's podcast a couple weeks ago talking about this. So what are some of the things kind of into the underpinning here?
I mean, look at Joe. Look at Joe. Look at him. My man.
It's a real one. That's a real one.
Yep. I mean, okay. So first off, I predicted $35 oil by the end of 2020, and that was a whiff. That was a whiff of proportions like the Saudis whiffed when they went to the price war with the Russians in March 2020. Like it was,
ouch.
Yeah, it was bad.
That's aggressive.
It was, well, okay. I didn't ruin the global economy, obviously. It's just a prediction, like proportionally speaking, like, they sent prices sub $39, and I just missed on the prediction. So whatever. It's same thing. For me, it's the same thing. I still think that the prices are a little too high. I mean, I don't know. Let's just say the prices are right, just for the sake of argument.
Mm-hmm.
There's not. Here's how I look at it. The Saudis took off the 1 million barrels. I'm sure they're going to put those 1 million barrels back on. They're going to announce they're going to put it back on Thursday, Friday this week, which means they come back on, April, May, right? Okay, so you got that. If you're China, you're sitting there going, okay, we can't see the price go up too much higher. So, and I think, this, when you talk about, okay, in the U.S., when we look at production, we're like, oh, Marathon's trying to do this, and look at their stock price, and okay, I don't know how it works between the Saudis and the Chinese, but it's not like watching it and analyzing it. It's like, hey, Guess what? We need more or do less. Okay. Like, like they collude. This is not the free market at work the same way that it is here in the US. And so, if you're China, how are you not on the phone with Saudi and whomever else you can get to answer your phone call going, guys, the price cannot keep going up. Our economy cannot take high prices. Now they've got a bunch of oil that they can internalize and put back on their market. But that, or they can put it back on the global market to put prices down. So I think the Saudis put their million barrels back on the market. And, if I'm the Saudis, I'm trying to keep the price that tops out at 60, but stays between 50 to 60 and then dips sub 50 occasionally, hit that 47, 48 mark, because that's the trigger warning for the U.S. producers. So if you want to keep the U.S. producers in check, you kind of drop sub 50 occasionally, and that's just enough to keep a lot of companies at bay. That's kind of my take on it. As far as the market goes, in general, if you look at, there's reports now coming out of India about how high their gasoline prices are. Of course, they tax like 60% of their gasoline prices taxed, something like that's crazy. So they can't afford higher gasoline prices. So the prices can't keep going higher. I know when you talk about this offline some, but the prices can't keep going higher because people can't afford it. So what will be done to stop that? That's the real question. Because if the prices get really high, you're going to have some broke folk all over the world who are going to be angry. I mean, talking about real anger because they can't afford anything. And that's going to be tragic because you're talking about people who legitimately can't afford food, gas, stuff like that.
Yeah. One of the things that I think we should, obviously need to leave for a future date here is, and we talked, I think, a little bit offline about this last week, that the sort of where we are in the current U.S. economy has sort of decoupled from reality in the sense that, I mean, there are a number of reports coming out that speak to that there's more liquidity in the market than there has been in years, and more people, on an individual basis have savings that than in years past, et cetera, and that's sort of flies in the face of the devastation and the job loss, et cetera. And I think that could be really, that's going to be a really interesting story to track here as we continue to, I was about to say walk out of the coronavirus situation, but I guess that's not a accurate phrasing at all. But it's a lot, it seems to have become sort of more of the, yeah, we could also talk about that book too. No, that's going to be a good one, actually. So like Ryan mentioned, I mentioned that book, or I pull out a couple of things. I talk about that in the article that I think Ryan mentioned was going to be released tomorrow.
Yeah, tease it out. That's what I say. Tease your article out, because I've read about a quarter, about half, I think, or maybe 2/3 of it. So that will be coming out tomorrow morning at thewarroomnewsletter.com. I'll tweet out a discount code right here for folks who are following along, but tell folks what they might expect when they pick that up in the morning.
Yes. So for those that may not be aware, the Delaware River Basin Commission is in charge of their delegated power to adjudicate an area of a river basin that encompasses about 13,000 square miles and provides water to about 13 million people. It's arguably, it's unclear whether it's within their mandate to regulate or adjudicate oil and gas matters. Irrespective of that, over the last decade or so, this started back in 2010. They have been making some moves to restrict the oil and gas, or I should say specifically natural gas and hydraulic fracturing processes in the basin. And I think that some of the facts there are sort of very important to the story, and I don't think the proper context within the narrative, as is pretty the norm in sort of the mainstream media, is appropriate. And so I kind of wanted to speak to that and pull some context together so we can see what it looks like in the morning.
Yep. And just as an aside, one of the things I loved about the piece was you pointed out that Congress has delegated to these committees, that these groups, these the words is slipping my tongue right now. These
administrative agencies.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Just, oh, by the way, term limits would exacerbate that problem. And with that, we're going to wrap.
Noted. Noted. All right, that's how we're gonna play it. All right.
Right, Ray. Not the chosen one. Ben Samuels, my press secretary. Good seeing you, Brian. Thank you for just playing along. Joe, everyone else. Be back next week. Joe.